Hey folks, this is Brother Mike, broadcasting to you from my palatial studios here in the great city of Worcester, Massachusetts and central Massachusetts. And welcome. I hope you'll be able to spend just a little bit of time with me because I've got something that's kind of important that I want to talk to you about today. I like to talk about issues that affect us all. You know, um, I like to kind of discuss issues pertaining to the law. Part of the reason why is because I do have a paralegal degree. In fact, I graduated from my paralegal program Phi Theta Kappa. So, I'm kind of informed and I'm a trained mediator. Now, I do these videos, for specific reasons. My subject is often uh, on the subject of the town that I live in, which is Worcester. I don't know how things are going in your neck of the woods, but here in Worcester, we're kind of living in perilous times. We've got a lot of issues here in Worcester. Matter of fact, not long ago, we had the United States Department of Justice in town. They put on a series of meetings because we have a lot of problems with the concept of equal protection under the law here in Worcester. We happen to be the city in America that has the absolute worst drivers in the country. And it's the second worst place in America to live if you're retired, like me. I'll be 65 in November. The first worst place in America to be retired is Detroit. So kind of puts it in perspective for you. Well, the subject that I want to discuss today regards our government. We've got some problems with the government here. I'm not saying that everything is terrible. We have some pluses, we have some minuses. Unfortunately, we have to analyze the minuses in order to increase the pluses. And that's the motivation that Brother Mike has with these videos. We want to try to make our community a better place to live in. We hope that if we make our community a better place to live in, then Massachusetts will be a better place to live in. And hopefully, we can improve the situation around the country by increasing people's awareness and by having them focus on how they live their lives so they can contribute to the betterment of our culture and society. Well, the subject that I often talk about is the Worcester Police. It's an agency of the government here in Worcester that has a particular problem with the concept of equal protection under the law. We've got a lot of cases here where we've come out on the short end, and as a result of that, we've incurred millions and millions of dollars in damages to people. And who pays for that? The taxpayers. So obviously, it's in our interest to look at these subjects and see if we can improve them. Well, the agency of government that I want to talk to you about today is the Worcester Housing Authority. I live in a property for the elderly that is managed by the Worcester Housing Authority. I want to make it very clear from the get-go that I like the place that I live in. I appreciate the hard work that the Worcester Housing Authority puts into making this place livable. However, I've got an issue that I want to bring to your attention today that is really going to blow your mind because of the level of absurdity that is incorporated into it, all right? So just follow with me, will you? And I'm going to kind of run it down to you. In the month of July, I paid my rent. I'm a faithful rent payer. I pay my rent on time every month because, like I said, I'm appreciative of the opportunity that I have to live here, and we have rights as tenants and we have duties as tenants, and one of our duties is to pay our rent on time, which I do faithfully. Now, month of July, I followed my ordinary routine, go down to the post office, get a money order. They give us these slips that we put in envelopes along with the money order, and we dispatch it to Fitchburg, Massachusetts, where the rental payment is processed through the Fidelity Bank. I go through my normal routine. Everything's okay. Put the envelope in the mailbox. Forget about it. Okay. Well, and this is on the 29th of June. For my July rent. Well, come the right around the month of August, I get my mail, and there's a letter there from the Worcester Housing Authority. I open it up, and let me tell you, it freaked me out. It was a 14-day notice to quit for non-payment of rent. And I'm scratching my head, and I'm going, why am I getting this notice? I never got a notice before. I follow the same routine that I follow every other time. So what's the problem here? So I went down to the office and talked to the secretary about it. Nobody else was in the office but the secretary. And she said that, well, don't freak out. I told her I got a little bit of anxiety about this, because, hey, let's face it, when you're going on 65 years old, and we have people in this building, it's a 11, 12-story building, and we have a lot of people in this building that are much older than me, and not quite as healthy as me. Half the people here, they get around with walkers. They have motorized wheelchairs. They're like 91 years old, with oxygen, and for some of them, this place is their last roundup. This is their last rodeo, and they're very dependent on their housing here. And incidentally, we have a tenants council. It's a board of people. We have meetings periodically with the tenants, and we discuss issues, that are going to improve the lives of the tenants. And we have social events, and we even have bingo here, And if I had to rate this place on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd really have to give it like a 7, I'd rate it higher, but for the fact that we have a lot of problems here in the building in terms of how people relate to each other. There's a lot of conflict between people groups here, and that's understandable. The hardest thing for people to do is to be in relationship with one another. But, I would rate the place very good, But getting back to my timeline on this rental issue, I said, well, I'm going to just be careful here, I'm going to put a trace on the money order at the post office and make sure that they received it and that they negotiated it, kind of cover my back, So I go down to the post office, nice guy down there, I see him every month, when I do my business at the post office, we chit-chat a little bit, and I kind of, gave him a little thumbnail about, why I was there, how, they said that I didn't pay my rent when I was pretty certain that I did, and he's like, oh, no, not another one. He says, every month, we have about a half a dozen people from those buildings over there come to the post office to trace these money orders because of the fact that the Worcester Housing Authority has said that they haven't paid their rent, So I'm not the only one, that's afflicted with this issue, Well, anyway, I paid the guy the $6.20, for the trace on the money order, and the lady at the office, she told me don't freak out about it, So, I was a little bit relieved. I said, well, I'm just gonna wait and see, what happens when that trace has been completed. Well, lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, I get a letter from the United States Post Office. I have that letter right here. And, yep, everything went through just fine. I'll show it to you. You can see official stationery, United States Postal Service. There's the copy of the money order. And there's the back of the money order. So they received the money order, and they cashed the money order. And what the problem was, I don't know, but you know. Anyway, so I figure, hey, case closed. I'm out of the woods. Everything is okay. I don't have to freak out. And a couple of weeks went by. We get into the middle of the month of August or so. About the third week in August, and I get a telephone call from the manager of the building. She's a woman who manages these elderly housing complexes, and her name is Tiffany. And she tells me that we still have you on our court list. We have you among the people who are scheduled for eviction because we still haven't received your rent. And I told her, I says, hey, look, I paid the rent. And so she says, well, you're going to have to prove this to us. Okay, hey, no problem. I get my little documents together and, rehearse my little speech. And I carry myself down there to Lakeside Avenue to the office, to prove to her that I paid my rent. And I ran it down to her like this. I said, really, Tiffany, there are three parties involved in this matter. Me, the guy that's supposed to pay the rent. The post office, the people that are supposed to dispatch it to you, and the Worcester Housing Authority. And I showed her the trace on the money order. And I said, so obviously, I paid the rent. Obviously, the post office dispatched the payment. So obviously, the problem is with the Worcester Housing Authority. Why do so, I figured, hey, this is going to be case closed, all smiles and happy times, you know what I mean? We got a problem solved. Her response to me was kind of odd, to say the least. She said to me, as she examined the letter from the post office, this doesn't prove a thing. Well, now we're exiting the realm of rationality here, I told her, I says, I have to differ with you on that, because obviously you got paid. Whatever you did with the money, I don't know, but, that's not my responsibility. Well, she insisted that I still owed them this money, $270. Now, I'm on Social Security like many Americans are, and I rely on my meager Social Security check, for to get along every month, And she tells me that what we're going to have to do here is bill you, basically, for this alleged outstanding balance, And I'm like, wow, But I'm getting a little bit intimidated because this woman has authority. Excuse me, she's got authority, she could make my life difficult, And oftentimes, even when we know that we're right, we wonder if we can prevail, if things will be handled fairly when you're just like a person off the street, basically, and the person that is you're in dispute with is a member of the professional elite or is clothed with some kind of governmental authority, you still aren't convinced that you're going to come out on top, And this is really the way I felt, And then she took it one step further, and she said that, we're going to have to enter into an agreement where you pledge to pay us this money again. All right? This is where things get a little bit murky, people, And this is the agreement here. You can see it. Worcester Housing Authority, official agreement. Basically what she wanted me to do is pay her every month an additional $54 until this alleged $270 outstanding rent payment for the month of July was satisfied. And this is an official contract, you can see. I signed it and she signed it. This obligates me to pay this money, and I didn't want to sign it, but I felt like I was being coerced. I was kind of being put in fear, and I was being threatened, with eviction. Like I said, for me and a lot of people like me, keeping in mind that the post office guy said 6 people come there every month. And I'm on the board here, so I kind of, feel like I have a responsibility to my neighbors. Now we're supposed to be good neighbors. Some of these people, maybe they can't defend themselves the way I can. Maybe they don't have a paralegal degree and don't have the assurance, that if they prove their point, everything is going to be okay. 91 years old on oxygen, last rodeo, they might just end up paying the money, So I'm looking at this as an issue that really has to be resolved, not only for myself, but on behalf of my neighbors, And the Bible says that we're supposed to love our neighbors, And Brother Mike loves the Bible and believes that everything in that book is the whole truth, and that if I'm following God's will, He's going to take care of me, So, I went home. And, you kind of lay in bed at night and you're, rethinking everything, and I was like, gee whiz, if she takes me to court, housing court, for the eviction, how is she going to prevail, And I'm going to read to you the wording of this agreement, okay? And you'll see how I can have this level of confidence, that if she were to take me to court, I wouldn't suffer a negative outcome, And it says the Worcester Housing Authority and Michael Morris hereby enter this agreement. Tenant agrees that he owes the authority $270 towards retro rent owed for July 2015. Here's a very important sentence. Mr. Morris provided management with proof of payment and a trace of the money order in question. Tenant agrees to pay this amount in addition to the regularly recurring monthly rent according to the following schedule, $54 a month up till January 2016, until this $270 has been alleged debt has been satisfied, and here's my question. If you have the presence of mind to include in a contract a statement that says this guy paid the rent, Mr. Morris provided management with proof of payment and a trace of the money order in question. Now, you're admitting that you've been paid. So why are you going to ask somebody for the money again? Why are you going to require somebody to pay you again after you have admitted that you already been paid? All right? Why are you going to put somebody in fear, threaten them with eviction, and coerce them into signing an agreement to give you more money when you have admitted that they already paid you? Well, folks, they have a word for this. It's called extortion. It's a criminal act. I didn't make this up. I didn't force her to, go overboard on this thing and, go into a criminal act. She did this voluntarily, and I told her, I said, I feel very uncomfortable about signing this thing, and by signing, you're creating an adversarial relationship between you and I. you know. And when you're in an adversarial relationship with somebody, you've got an obligation to defend yourself, you know. And sometimes defending yourself means offending them, you know. So I hope that the Worcester Housing Authority doesn't hold it against me, doesn't say, "Oh God, we got a troublemaker here," you know what I mean, and jeopardize my tenancy here for objecting to being extorted, and for advocating on behalf of not only myself but my fellow tenants as a member of the board here. Okay, so obviously there's a problem down there at the Worcester Housing Authority. Well, anyway, I wrote her a letter, and I told her, I says, if you want to take me to court, go ahead and take me to court. I'm not going to give you the additional $54 every month, you know? And, you know, I said, I need to talk to somebody who is a little bit higher in the food chain, you know, because obviously this woman has some kind of an issue, you know. And so we had a crime watch meeting here. There's representatives from the housing authority, the police, you know, our local representative was here, and the lady from the housing authority, her name is Mona Lisa, and I grabbed her ear, and I ran this thing down to her, you know, and you know, she was kind of at a disadvantage because, you know, she was not as versed in law as I am, and she was having a difficult time grasping the serious nature of this exposure that this woman, Tiffany, has subjected the housing authority to. Because they have a concept in law, it's called respondeat superior. You know, if you're walking across the street and you get hit by a commercial truck, you know, you're not going to sue the driver because he really doesn't have deep pockets, you know. What you're going to do is you're going to go after his boss. You're going to go after the trucking company. They've got the deep pockets, you know, and they are responsible for this driver's actions when he is in the course and scope of his employment. Now, when Tiffany forced me to sign this document, this legal contract obligating me to pay the Worcester Housing Authority an additional $270 after admitting that she'd already been paid, she was definitely in the course and scope of her employment. And therefore, what she has really done is exposed the Worcester Housing Authority to criminal liability. Now, you know, you say, oh, Mike, you know, this is kind of like a stretch, you know. How can you say, you know, that, you know, this is a crime? You know, well, it's not extortion in the classic sense. And the reason why is because no money ever exchanged hands. However, here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have a concept that's called attempted extortion. You know, it's Section 25 of some Mass General Law that outlines the penalties for attempted extortion. So even though this is not extortion, it is definitely an attempt at extortion. And now, when you prosecute somebody for a crime, every crime has elements to it. Some crimes have 5 elements. You know, some crimes have less. The crime of extortion has basically just 2 elements. And I did my research, and I'm going to kind of illuminate you as to what the elements of the crime of extortion are, so that you know that I'm not just blowing smoke here. You know, I'm not, you know, this isn't an exercise in hyperbole or an exaggeration or an attempt to be sensationalistic about this. No, I'm the victim of a crime, you know, and anybody that is similarly situated who is subjected to the same remedy, which is to pay money again after the Worcester Housing Authority has misplaced a loss or can't account for the money is also being subjected to a crime, you know. And this is something that they really have to take a look at, you know. It may be just the individual person here and not the authority because, like I said to Mona Lisa, you know, if this is a policy, and a policy says this is the way things should be done, you know, you've got to change that policy because it is criminal. Okay? If it's not a policy, and she assured me that no, after looking at the paperwork, no, this is not the policy of the Worcester Housing Authority. We don't require people to pay us double when we can't find their money, you know? So if it's not a policy, what it is, it's a subjective act. It's an arbitrary and capricious act. You know, if you're going to require me to double pay rent, but you're not going to require somebody else to double pay rent, you know, what makes them any difference from me? You know, and they got a word for that too. You know, that's called discrimination. And in this case, housing discrimination, okay? So pick your poison. You know, this is either attempted extortion, discrimination, or both. All right, now I'm going to run these elements of extortion down to you so that you'll understand that Brother Mike knows what he's talking about, all right? And this is common law. You know, this is something that's common no matter where you go. You go to a different state, they may have a little bit of a wrinkle on it, you know, but they're all going to follow this basic common law pattern, all right? Now, under common law, extortion is a misdemeanor consisting of an individual taking money, of an unlawful taking of money by a government officer. It is an oppressive misuse of power with which the law clothes a public officer. Yeah, we're talking about oppression here. Hey, when your Social Security check is as big as mine, excuse me, and you got to pay $270 a month, and then they want an additional $54 a month from you, that's oppressive, you know. When you go home and can't sleep at night because somebody's shaking you down, you know, for double your rent for the month of July, yeah, that's oppressive. So, you know, we got a little bit of oppression going on here, you know. And, you know, most jurisdictions have statutes governing extortion that broadens the common law definition. But let's look at some additional topics concerning these elements. Extortion, elements of the offense. Virtually all extortion statutes require that a threat be made to the person or property of the victim. Yep, there was a threat made. We're going to evict you. If you don't pay us this money, we're going to take you to court. We're going to testify against you. And if we prevail, you're going to be thrown on the street. And with the money that you get from Social Security, you're going to have a very hard time, you know, getting housing. All right? So, yeah, there was a threat made. We got that one covered. Now, threats to harm the victim's friends or relatives may also be included. It is not necessary for a threat to involve physical injury. It may be, if sufficient, to threaten to accuse another person of a crime, or to expose a secret that would result in public embarrassment or ridicule. You have to excuse me. I don't have my glasses on. You know, this is kind of small print. Okay? Now, there's a special category of extortion, and this is extortion by a public officer. Now, this woman is a public officer. She is an agent of a public agency. All right? So let's see what they have to say about that. The essence of extortion by a public officer is the, my goodness, I got to get my glasses. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. The essence of extortion by a public office is the oppressive use of official position to obtain a fee. The officer falsely claims authority to take that which he or she is not lawfully entitled to. You're not lawfully entitled to get more money off of me after I paid you and after you admit that you've been paid. That's an unlawful act. So, it comports with this definition of extortion. This is known as acting under color of office. All right? So, we got a very serious situation here. And one of Brother Mike's pet peeves, like I said at the beginning of this thing, is, this concept of equal protection under the law. When you're governing people, it's the easiest way to govern somebody is in a dictatorial model. It's easier to be a dictator than to recognize people's constitutional rights, And this is the big problem that I have here with these people in Worcester. Now this matter that I'm involved in, it's like a dictatorial act, It's like, they're the serfs and I'm the vassal. I'm supposed to just roll over and play dead and give them money, even though by statute they're committing a crime. All right, and the only reason why the world is like it is because we make it that way, and our leaders have an obligation to us. All right, the Bible says that the systems of the world are demonic, and that's an outrageous statement. How can you say that the systems of the world are demonic? Well, the reason why you can say that is because the Bible also says, "Let the master be the servant to all." That's the biblical model for being a master. You got to be a servant to all. Are our masters our servants? Not by a long shot. So as long as our masters oppress us, threaten us, coerce us, and do really stupid stuff, like try to get us to pay our rent twice when they admit that we already paid, they are not being our servants, and as long as they embrace that ethos, the system that they represent is going to be demonic. You got that? There's no two ways about it, and that's why I do these videos. I want to encourage our government, particularly here in the city of Worcester, because it's costing the taxpayers millions of dollars every time they screw up, and violate somebody's constitutional rights. This place is not going to improve. Our country is not going to improve. So, just think of it this way. What if it was your mother? What if it was your grandmother? What if you're approaching the age where you may have to rely on public housing? It could be you. Don't you have an obligation to help these people? Because the Bible also says that, as Christians, we're supposed to help the widowed and the oppressed, and people that fall under the spell of, this particular policy are definitely being oppressed. So I'm going to do another video on the subject because, they have not responded to me. I have not heard back from Tiffany, from Mona Lisa. And I'm going to publish another video following up on this, and I want you people to track with me. So if you would, subscribe to the channel. All right, there's a button down there. Press that button because I want you to follow along with me. If you got comments to make, make those comments. If you're a local Worcester person and you see this video, I don't want you to think that Brother Mike is a troublemaker or anything like that. You should be saluting me. You should say, "Oh, this guy is somewhat courageous because People in my position are often ostracized, but I have confidence that I am lined up with the will of God in advocating, for the end of this practice, and that God is going to protect me. And I pray that God will bless you. And I want to thank you for bearing with me for these 30 odd minutes. And, God bless America, and have a great day.